A church bell echoes through the mist, low, sonorous, ancient. Its voice rolls across thatched roofs, stirring the crows from blackened chimneys. Beneath the grey sky, smoke curls upward in quiet ribbons, while frost clings to the wooden beams. Of sleeping homes, in the silence, before the fields stir, before the first hoe meets soil, the village kneels. A murmur of prayer threads through the cold Latin words, mouthed by peasants who do not understand them but feel them. Their hands, cracked and coarse, press against breasts layered in wool and sweat. The world is broken, they are told, broken by sin, by pride, by Eve, and only by toil and faith will it be redeemed. So they pray, not for joy, but for endurance, life. In the medieval village is a circle of survival drawn tight. Each dawn, like the one before, demands sacrifice to the land, to the Lord, to the unknown. Mud is a constant companion. It clings to shoes, crusts on hems, pools in footprints left by barefoot children racing to catch geese. The air tastes of smoke and dung and ash, bitter, real, unrelenting. The heart of the village beats in its soil. Here men and women bend their backs to the land, not out of choice, but from inheritance. The fields stretch outward like parchment scrawled in toil, etched with furrows made by iron plows and calloused hands. The earth gives, but never easily. Grain is sown not with certainty, but hope. Rain may come too late, or too much. A single pestilence can strip a harvest bare. And when it does, the Lord's barn remains full, because this land is not theirs, not truly. It belongs to the noble whose stone manor watches from the hill, aloof and unmoved. Yet even beneath the weight of servitude, life finds a rhythm. Children scamper after chickens. Old women knit by doorways, their eyes clouded by age, but sharp still for gossip. Blacksmiths sing their anvils' songs, and women gather in the bakehouse, their laughter soft, their hands deep in dough, turning grain into bread and silence into communion. Faith weaves through every moment. It is stitched into banners fluttering outside the chapel. It is whispered into the wind when a storm breaks too early or too late. It is carved into the weathered wood of crucifixes that hang above hearths, where fire flickers like a hesitant soul. The church is not just a building, it is the spine of this world. Its priest, often the only literate man, holds more than scriptures. He holds the power to bless or condemn, to absolve or accuse, and so the villagers obey. They kneel in penance beneath candlelight, their sins heavy as stone. They watch the host rise, hear Latin fall like distant thunder, and believe, because to not believe is to risk everything, not just in death, but in life, because here punishment comes swift when disputes arise over fields or fences, or the accusation of a stolen chicken. Justice is summoned, not in marble halls, but beneath open skies. The manor court gathers, a circle forms, villagers stand shoulder to shoulder, breath ghosting in the air. The bailiff stands at the center, parchment in hand, flanked by men whose loyalty bends toward the Lord. There are no lawyers, no mercy for ignorance. The accused stands with trembling lips, often beside the very neighbor who accused them. Justice here is not blind. It sees too well, a woman too bold, a man too quiet, a child who asks the wrong questions, all confined themselves at the court's mercy. Fines are dealt like lashes. Humiliation is common. Stocks await those who defy, and the pillory is not forgotten Yet the people come. They come not just for verdicts, but for drama, for stories and secrets spilled in public. Here, under watchful eyes, tension dissolves or festers, and sometimes, in rare moments, reconciliation is achieved, not by the court, but by the crowd. A nod, a hand extended, a muttered apology that will echo for years. And when justice fails, and it often does, the village remembers. They remember who was favored. They remember who walked free. They remember when a child was punished for a noble's crime, and in that memory, seeds of dissent are quietly, dangerously sown. As dusk descends, the fields fall silent. The green at the village center empties slowly, boots leaving prints in soft earth, stories folding back into whispers. The hearths glow behind wooden shutters, and one by one, candles are snuffed. But above, the stars remain indifferent, watching, eternal. Somewhere, a mother sings a lullaby older than memory. A man touches the cross above his doorway with trembling fingers. A child, half asleep, whispers to the night sky, asking if angels truly hear. Tomorrow will be the same prayers, the same soil, the same fears, but change, like rot, begins. Unseen, it stirs in silence. And beneath the surface of this quiet village, beneath the rhythms of faith and field, something has begun to shift. The hunger for more, for freedom, for justice not dictated from the hill, but rising from the earth. And so we move forward into the pulse of rebellion, the spark of plague, the fire of upheaval. But for now, the village sleeps, wrapped in shadows, and in dreams shaped by chains and hope. A single crow dies in the mudder, harsh croak cut short. Dawn spills pale and trembling across a village gripped by hunger. Empty fields gape like wounds. The sky presses low, heavy with rain that never quite falls. This is no ordinary drought, but rot in the bones of the land. The great famine has come. Farmhands move like shadows among battered furrows. Their spades scoop wet clay where wheat should stand tall. Cattle rot before the plough's first cut, their breath slow in the chill. A mother lifts her gaunt child, a hollow cheek, sunken eyes an echo of the harvest that never came. Bad weather has haunted them since 1315, soon 2 years of relentless cold, of swollen barren fields. Crops failed, livestock died, and churches, bulged with grain yet bellies, remained empty. Desperation spreads like rot. Some whisper of crimes worse than theft rumors, of infants taken in the night, of kin eating what cannot be named. All speak of the barns on the hill, full while they starve. They speak, too, of the church. Priests move from cottage to cottage, distributing scraps of bread and whispering absolution, but their words taste hollow. In fields and fetid lanes, faith begins to crumble, eroded by empty bellies and unanswered prayers, and yet they endure. They cannot do otherwise. A village meeting forms beneath tattered banners. The reeve stands before the fallen, holding maps of debts as if they were holy writ. The air is thick with mutiny. Eyes that once dipped before the manna now burn with quiet rage. The famine has given them courage. They will not starve for another's profit. Hoarse voices argue, reduce rent, seize a lord's fodder, burn records. A scythe is held in trembling grip, but others' falter fear still binds them. They are peasants, after all, bred to bow. Then, like lightning in grey skies, plague arrives. It steals in whispers, rats in the thatch, fleas on cattle. or first foul-smelling breaths, then boils black as midnight and coughs that rend bone. House by house, death falls. Priests fall too, clutching crucifixes as heat swallows them. Graves multiply. Earth cannot hold them. Bodies lie in ditches and barns. The living tremble at every knock. Fear becomes a living thing. Neighbors shun. Neighbors, doors are sealed with crosses. Under moonlight, a woman is dragged from her hut, accused of harboring plague. Her screams, lost in mud and mistrust. The church, once their spine, frays before their eyes. How can faith withstand this? Living death? In desperation, flagellants roam the lanes. Naked, bloodied, they chant. Flesh and fervor, seeking God's mercy through pain. Sometimes they heal. More often, they incite riots blaming witches, Jews, priests, each other. The village's quiet center fractures. Months pass. Half the souls are gone. The surviving peasants walk inherited space, abandoned cottages, untended fields. Wages rise, lords beg for hands. Suddenly, labor has value. The old bondsmanner, duty, silence crack in the shifting earth. In this tension, seeds of rebellion take root. Stories spread across fields and ravaged lanes, of peasants in England refusing to work unless rent falls, of French mobs tearing down manorial houses, of Italian weavers rising in Florence one night. Under a blood-red moon, the villagers gather in the Chapulya. A gaunt elder raises a broken pitchfork to the sky. We sow seeds of our own fate from now on. The crowd surges, a heartbeat of power in cracked earth. They march toward the manor, torches swallowing darkness. The next dawn finds the manor. House smoldering, ledgers burn, windows shatter, servants and bailiffs flee. No great armies, no lords on horseback, just peasants, ragged but resolute. They claim grain, land, a new word whispered between them. Freedom, but freedom tastes bitter. Plague still lurks. The church curses them from altars. Noblemen muster. The manor, burned, remains in ruins. And for a moment, terrible, trembling moment, the old world lies silent. In the midst of ashes and victory, a child picks up a scorched crucifix. Rain begins to fall cold, driving, unrelenting. Mud returns, pulling at boots and hope alike. The survivors look at each other, and in their eyes, fear and hunger and possibility. They stand at the threshold between two worlds. Behind them, centuries of custom and obedience. Ahead, uncertainty plagues return. Lord's revenge, the long dawn of new rights. Somewhere, in distant towns, flames of revolt ignite. This village's rebellion will echo beyond. But now, in this moment, they breathe. They taste rain, cold and sharp. They hear their own hearts beat. And as the forge of change kindles in wet clay and blackened stone, they kneel not before a priest, but before one another. Hands join in mud, in promise. A lullaby rises, not for endurance now, but for rebirth. The camera lingers on the scorched path to the manor. Smoke curls upward, mingling with mist, a torch guttering, and then silence. Smoke and ash swirl above the ruined manor, grey shrouds rolling into dawn. The villagers stand in silence, rain dripping from torches gutted by wind. Their rebellion smolders, but the wider storm looms. From this scorched earth, a new chapter unfolds. Europe is cracking at its seams. The distant thunder of the 100 Years' War draws near, an echo of dynastic claims and continental conflict that will reshape all it touches. Lords, depleted by plague and famine, now beg for labor. Survivors, though hollowed by grief, have tasted their own strength. No longer are they mere instruments of serfdom. Royal edicts, like the Statute of Laborers, intent on binding them to pre-plague wages and curbing their newfound leverage, fall into a world that has shifted beneath their feet. Wikipedia. Feudal foundations shudder. Plague returns, each outbreak a reminder that mortality still stalks their lanes. Survivors eye one another with suspicion, fearing contagion and betrayal. Churches strain to reopen sanctuaries, but faith already fractured begins to crack under the weight of fear and loss. Elsewhere, rebellion burns. Stories drift in on the wind. In England, the Peasants' Revolt, led by Wat Tyler and John Ball, ragged crowds, seizing London, forcing the boy king to promise land reform and an end to serfdom, only to have their dreams struck down in Smithfield. Encyclopedia Britannica. In France, the Jacquerie of 1358 saw peasants smashing manor houses in righteous fury. In Rouen, craftspeople rose in the Hural medieval life. These are not distant tales, they are mirrors of what has happened in this village. Proof of a world shifting as fire shifts coal. Here, the chapel stands battered, stained glass shattered, crucifixes fractured. The priest, gaunt beneath his hood, returns with battered scripture. His voice trembles as he preaches obedience and unity. Some kneel, many do not. Silence, heavier than tombstones, answers him. A messenger appears, gaunt. He bears the king's writ. Sons must go to war, debts must be paid, loyalty restored. Wind lashes his cloak. Villagers meet him with clenched fists and clenched hearts. They gather at the ruined gate. The reclaimed grain, store broad as hope, sacred as revolution is, filled half for feeding the poor, half for wary safeguarding. In the chapel yard debates, rise, send men to fight distant wars, or stand firm to defend their fragile freedom. A child's voice shatters the tension. What will we be if they take our sons? Frost forms on every lip. Memory sharpens resolve. The famine's hurt. The plague's terror, they steal them. But war's summons tests every bond. Rebellion gave them power. Now it demands sacrifice. In the end, they choose balance. A small levy, fathers, brothers, young warriors, will march at dawn, an act of submission. The rest will remain, rebuilding. Fields, guarding hearths, tending to the scarred soil and scarred souls. At twilight, they gather for a vigil outside the chapel. Torches flicker beneath the jagged outline of broken crucifixes. They pray not for mere endurance, but for enduring, with purpose. May this blood debt earn them security. Standing, justice, the bell tolls once under a pulsing sky age, peal uniting the village heartbeat with the realm. At first light, the levy marches, ragged columns in worn armor step from the gate. Women press bread into their hands. Old men trace blessings on calloused backs. Smoke curls from hearths lit against winter's promiser, fragile defiance. The camera holds on the empty path. The first soldier steps forward, spear in hand. Behind him, silent fields stained with the last harvest. Beyond, the horizon glows, battlefields await. A stillness hangs over silent fields as dawn breaks. A lone arch rises above the horizon, an oak longbow, held by your village's son. He stands among ragged ranks, eyes hollow with fear and resolve, heart trembling between two worlds. They march toward war. The ground beneath them shifts boots, stir fertile soil that once fed their kin. Ahead lies the shadow of conflict as the 100 Years' War sweeps across the land. carrying torture, triumph, and transformation. Their first taste of this war comes in plundered hamlets. English chevauchés scorched the countryside with burned to provide food for armies, fear sown in furrows of devastation. Coming from rebellion to war, these men witnessed suffering far beyond their home's ruin. They learned that war is not chivalry, is a crucible. Finally, near Crécy in northern France, August 26, 1346, they form ranks on a gentle hill. Beneath a low sky, 10,000 long bowmen, many like them, sons of peasants, stand ready. Opposing them, a host of French knights and Genoese crossbowmen, their armor gleaming, force surging forward. Archers brace, the English longbow, silent power drawn and held. Crossbow strings clatter. Rain has loosened them, making each shot slow and weak. Then the French charge knights and crossbowmen in disarray, tripping through mud and panic. Arrows rain, horses falter, knights fall, waves of cavalry crest and break again, shattered by foot soldiers' fire. One villager later recalls the flash of steel on flesh, the roar swallowing his soul. Men fall beside him, some noble, some common, but the arrow sees no rank. Night drags on, the field becomes a morass of death and defiance. Philippe's cavalry halts, the English hold firm. Nearly 1/3 of French mounted nobility lie dead under that August sky. In the aftermath, Edward's army marches on Callerol. The wild field-tested archers, once village sons, now define a new era of warfare. Our villagers survive, wounded but alive. They carry with them mud-slicked clothes, scorched sense of purpose. They are still peasants, yet changed. They return to their homes bearing stories of slaughter, strategies learned, and kin lost in a steam of conflict. Back at the village, fields lie untended. The grain storables, legacy feeds them. But the war's echo arrives. Taxes are levied for conquest, levies demanded, obedience expected. Lords, desperate for funds, exploit every household's output. Rights won by rebellion begin to fray under ancient privilege. In the chapel ruins, the priest still murmurs hymns, but now he prays for peace in a land sundered by war and famine. The chapel's broken crucifix is reattached, cheech nail hammered like an oath. To survive, endure, rebuild even, as swords hang over Europe once more. Beyond the clay walls, smoke rises again, but this time from battlefield campfires, not rebellion. Across the horizon, the war churns. Poitiers, Agincourt, Orleans. National identities are born amid banners drenched in blood. The old medieval world crumbles into a new age, and peasant archers realize their arrows changed more than the battlefield. They pierced the veil between serf and soldier, between silence and voice. Fields lie barren beneath a brittle spring sun. The archers return, shoulders bowed beneath ransom, loot, and loss. Their longbows, once symbols of rebellion, now rest upon their shoulders like tired sentinels. They step across familiar clay paths, footfalls, echoing in empty lanes where neighbors once thrived. War's echo is everywhere. The grain store stands half empty, war's tribute siphoned into royal coffers and noble treasuries. Taxes fall heavier than ever. Purveyance drags on their yields. Lords, desperate to fund campaigns across the sea, seize what they can. Rights won in revolt begin to fray like worn cloth. The rewards of war, distributed by royal decree, bypass the village while burdens remain. Yet there is change in the air. The plague's scourge and the war's carnage have hollowed feudal order. Survivors claim abandoned manors. Laborers roam in search of opportunities. The old village hierarchies shake beneath new possibilities. Peasants now negotiate, demand, and sometimes own, in England and France alike. Poor peasants ascend to respected citizenry, but the peace is fragile. Summer brings the memory of death fields, unplowed families still mourning. Work begins again. Oxen plow, mud dark soil, spades turn under sweat and hope. The chapel, once desecrated, stands repaired. The crucifix hangs anew, each nail a promise to endure despite war's scars. Inside its walls, the priest speaks not of fealty, but of forgiveness and renewal. He preaches unity not to the king, but among themselves. In his voice is caution, a plea for restraint. Let not ancient chains return in new form. Women tend to return warriors, tying bandages, soothing nightmares of Cressy and Agincourt. They gather seed for planting, wheat, barley, peas. Some carry off cuts of French cloth, spoils of war, that whisper of different worlds and new trade. The village sends 3 archers further still, not to repopulate empty fields, but in a new. Rolas Franks archers, France's parish militia sworn to defend crown and realm. These are not mercenaries, but free men exempt from some taxes, expected to bear arms at a moment's notice. Such roles blur boundaries between peasant and soldier, commoner and citizen. By autumn, the chapel yard hosts a festival humble, but fiercely alive. They dance in straw, drink watered ale, give thanks for harvests and homecoming. Petty nobles and clerics attend, eyes widening. The same hands that fought their battles now sow grain fields and vote at the Reeves Council table. Peasant voices rise in prayer they once dared only whisper, but shadow still lies across their world. News drifts of the war raging against sieges at Orleans, St. Crispin's Day slaughter at Agincourt, victories and massacres across the Channel. Number analytics. England and France fracture, birthing nations yet tearing communities. The bishop warns that plagues return in cold years. Another famine may follow if war's demands stretch too far. In winter's hush, a lone archer stands. On the chapel steps, longbow across his back, breath steaming. He traces the repaired crucifix's outline. His twin names, peasant and soldier, hang between his fingertips. The world behind him is broken, the world ahead unshaped. He breathes deeply, tasting the cold air and possibility. Night falls. The chapel bell tolls. Inside, villagers kneel not before king or baron, but before each other. They pray quietly, for kin at war, for seeds to sprout in spring, for justice not given but earned. Beyond the walls, the wind carries the promise of new revolts of Catalonia's. Remenka of Germany's peasant unrest, echoes of a wave that cannot be stopped. Wikipedia. Here, in this small, stubborn village, the medieval world fractured from its cracks. Something new might grow.